everyone, welcome back. Today we're tackling something that's probably on a lot of people's minds these days. How to deal with the mental and emotional stress that seems to go hand in hand with a recession.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
You know, that feeling you get when the economy takes a downturn and suddenly everything feels uncertain. We're digging into an episode of the Mental Mastery podcast, hosted by Sarah and Matt, that focused on this exact issue. They had some really insightful points about why recessions can be so emotionally draining.
Right, like it's not all in our heads. There are actual reasons why it feels so stressful.
Exactly. So let's unpack some of those reasons. One of the first things they talked about was this idea that our brains really crave control.
It's true.
And when external factors like the economy go haywire, it's like our sense of control just evaporates.
It's like our brain is hardwired to seek out stability and predictability.
Yeah.
And when those things are absent, which happens a lot during a recession, it can trigger our anxiety.
Yeah, Sarah used this analogy of the brain being like, wait a minute, I like to know what's coming next. And suddenly it's like the rug's been pulled out from under us. They talked about how this whole thing of unpredictability really messes with our routines too.
Absolutely, because our routines give us a sense of structure and security. Think about it. During a recession, there's the potential for job changes. You might be worried about finances. It just throws everything up in the air.
And when those routines get disrupted, it can feel really unsettling, even if the changes aren't necessarily bad, just different.
Right. It's the uncertainty that really gets us. And that's where anxiety tends to take root. That fear of the unknown, the constant what ifs.
It's like a never-ending loop of what if this happens and what if that happens. It's exhausting, and it's so easy to get pulled into that spiral.
It is. And it's important to remember that these feelings, this anxiety, it's a totally normal reaction to a stressful situation. It's not a sign of weakness or that something is wrong with you.
So important to remember that. You're not alone if you're feeling this way. It's like your body's natural way of responding to a perceived threat, which is essentially what a recession is, at least to our brains. But anxiety is only one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right.
Sarah and Matt made a really important distinction between anxiety and depression, particularly in this context of a recession.
Yeah, it's easy to confuse the two because they often show up together.
Definitely. But they are distinct experiences. So how did they differentiate between the two?
Well, they said that anxiety is that feeling of fear or worry about what might happen in the future, whereas depression tends to be more about feeling hopeless and overwhelmed in the present moment.
So anxiety is more future-focused and depression is more present-focused.
Exactly. Matt described it as this feeling of constant worry coupled with a sense of helplessness, which really resonated with me. Like, imagine losing your job or facing some serious financial struggles.
It's easy to feel trapped by your circumstances in those situations.
Exactly. And that feeling of being stuck, of not seeing a way out, that's a major breeding ground for depression.
It's like feeling powerless to change your situation, even if logically, that you're not actually powerless. It's a really tough spot to be in.
Okay, so we've talked about how recessions can stir up all these feelings of anxiety and even depression, but knowing that doesn't make it any easier to deal with, right?
Right.
So what can we actually do to manage these emotions? Luckily, Sarah and Matt had some really practical advice in their podcast. One concept that Matt talked about really stuck with me. Small areas of control.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It's so easy to feel totally powerless when it seems like the economy is spinning out of control.
Totally. But Matt's point was that we can actually regain a sense of control by focusing on the things we can influence, even if they seem small.
It's like finding those little things you can control in the middle of all the chaos.
Exactly. Like maybe it's something as simple as limiting how much news you consume.
Oh, that's a big one. It's so easy to get sucked into that 24/7 news cycle, but it just feeds the anxiety. For sure. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. Not helpful.
Definitely not. Sarah also talked about how important it is to stick to routines, even when everything else feels upside down.
Oh, yeah, I love that. It's like creating little pockets of predictability in an otherwise unpredictable world.
Exactly. Even small routines like making your bed every morning or taking a walk after dinner can make a big difference.
It's like sending a signal to your brain that not everything is out of control. Some things are still stable and predictable.
Right. And speaking of calming the nervous system, Matt's a big advocate for deep breathing exercises.
Yes. Deep breathing for the win. There's actual science behind it too, right?
Yeah. Deep breathing actually signals to your nervous system that there's no immediate threat.
It's like hitting the reset button on your anxiety. Everything's cool, we got this. Which, let's be real, is a message we all need to hear sometimes.
Totally. And if those anxious thoughts, those what-ifs start creeping back in, Sarah suggests gently guiding your attention back to the present moment.
I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in those thought spirals.
It is. But if you can catch yourself and bring your attention back to the here and now, it can really help to interrupt that cycle of worry.
So it's about being present in the moment, and it's also about taking action, right?
Absolutely. Even small actions can make a big difference in how you feel.
So true. It's like you're reminding yourself that you're not helpless, that you have some agency.
Exactly. You're taking back the reins and remembering that you're not just along for the ride. You have some control over how you navigate this.
It's so true. That feeling of being stuck is really tough to shake. And that's where depression can really take hold, right?
Exactly. Sarah and Matt talked about how depression often stems from this feeling of hopelessness or like we've somehow failed. And those feelings can become really amplified during a recession.
Especially if you're dealing with job loss or financial struggles.
Absolutely. It's easy to start questioning your self-worth and get caught in that spiral of negative self-talk.
Like your inner critic just goes into overdrive. It's all my fault. I should have seen this coming. All that fun stuff.
Yeah, it can be brutal. But both Sarah and Matt emphasized the importance of challenging those thoughts and breaking things down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Oh, I love that. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the big picture, especially when things feel bleak.
Right. So instead of focusing on everything that's wrong, try to focus on what's one small thing you can do today to move forward. Even if it's just making your bed or sending one email.
It's about those small wins, right? Like each small step, no matter how insignificant it might seem, is still a step in the right direction.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of celebrating those small wins. It's a way of honoring your resilience and reminding yourself that you're capable of making progress, even when it's tough.
I love that. Celebrate the small wins. What else did Sarah and Matt suggest for dealing with these feelings of depression?
One thing Sarah emphasized was the importance of resisting the urge to isolate yourself, which can be so tempting when you're feeling down.
Oh, I feel that. When you're feeling depressed, sometimes all you want to do is curl up under the covers and hide from the world.
Right. But as tempting as that is, it's actually the opposite of what we need. Connection is crucial, especially during challenging times, even if it's just a quick phone call with a friend or a family member.
It's like throwing yourself a lifeline, right? Just reaching out and connecting with someone can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. And of course, if those feelings of depression become too overwhelming, it's always important to seek professional help. There's no shame in reaching out to a therapist or counselor for support.
Couldn't agree more. It's a sign of strength, not weakness, to ask for help when you need it. So we've talked about the emotional and mental toll that a recession can take, but there's another big piece of the puzzle we need to address: the financial stress.
Oh, for sure. That's often at the root of a lot of the anxiety and depression we've been talking about.
Absolutely. It's hard to feel mentally and emotionally stable when your finances are a mess. So how did Sarah and Matt approach this aspect of navigating a recession?
Well, they both stress the importance of budgeting, even if it seems daunting, especially during a recession when you might feel like there's not enough money to budget.
It can feel almost impossible to get a handle on your finances when it seems like everything is falling apart around you.
It can, but that's actually when budgeting is most important. Because when you create a budget, even a simple one, it gives you back a sense of control.
It's about taking charge of your money instead of feeling like your money is controlling you.
Exactly. And there are so many resources available these days to help you get started, like budgeting apps and financial counseling services.
Those can be lifesavers. Even having a small emergency fund can make a huge difference. It's like having a safety net, both financially and emotionally. It's about knowing that you have a little cushion to fall back on if things get tough.
Absolutely. It all comes back to that idea we talked about earlier, those small areas of control. Even small steps, like creating a budget or setting aside a little bit of money each month, can make a big difference in your overall well-being.
So much good advice from Sarah and Matt. It's so easy to feel helpless and overwhelmed during a recession, but it's important to remember that you're not alone and there are things you can do to navigate these challenging times. If you take anything away from this deep dive, let it be this: you are stronger than you think, and you have the power to create positive change in your life, even in the face of uncertainty. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into building recession resilience. We'll catch you next time.
Disclaimer: this is not medical advice. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor for advice. Please, if you find any value in our content, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.